Hi, Sean. Just checking that you can hear me.
Hey, Andrea. I can hear you.
Hi. Good. How are you doing? Hi, John. How are you? Can't hear you.
Good morning, everybody.
How's that?
Morning, Tim. That's better. There you go. Hi, Craig. Long time no see.
Yep. Look forward to seeing you in another hour. About one per hour. Hey, remind me to have a chat with you about letters of intent.
Yeah.
Had a good conversation with our staff yesterday about those.
Okay. Well, I'd appreciate that. So we can all be on the same page. Okay.
Literally and figuratively, right?
Yes. Okay. So I'm trying to see who we've got. I can see we have Phil, we have Tim, we have Tom, and that looks like it's so. Oh no, hang on. Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, I'm here.
Tom.
Morning.
I can't see any more steering committee people on the call yet.
So I was just informed that my coffee cup says meh on it. I assure you that was not intentional.
Meh.
That's what happens when you use your daughter's cup.
Okay. I think we need a few more for a quorum, don't we? Oh, Becky's on now. How many do we need for a quorum?
I believe you need 5.
1, 2. Do we have 5? 3, 4, 5. Well, we have 5, but let's give it a few more minutes. I don't want the Housel Levine team to have to repeat stuff. So Sarah's on. 6.
And even if you didn't have a quorum, I'm not sure there's an action being requested today.
No, that's true. Yeah, I just kind of want, as this is the first meeting we've had for a few months and reveal of the plan effectively, make sure that we have as many people as possible.
Well,
Sort of
according
feels
to
like
the agenda, we
sort
do
of feels
need
like
to
we
do
need
the
introductions all over
sunshine
again.
I'm getting a bit of echo there. Ryan's on as well. So we're starting to rack the people up. I just text Doug, Becky. Good. Well, I think we're getting close to everybody. Who are we missing? I know we're missing Doug. Who else are we missing?
You might be missing Phil too. I don't know if he's on.
Phil Thomas is on.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Ryan.
here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah. I can see
Hey, Phil.
Phil, Ryan, Sarah, Tom, Tim, and Becky. Okay. I think with that then, I think we've got enough. Oh, Mark just sent an email saying he's on, but he's stuck not with the video. He's only listening only for some reason, so at least Mark is there.
I think Mark joined as an attendee. I'll make him a panelist.
Okay, and then Doug Stipple just texts saying he's leaving town at 11, but he's trying to join by phone right now, so he should be with us shortly. Oh, he's on now. Yeah, I can see he's there now. Good. Okay, so it looks like we have pretty much everybody. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And first of all, we have to go through the Sunshine Law statement. So I just want to make a motion then to acknowledge the posting location of the agenda on the Planning and Community Development and the website and the consultants' web pages, as well as the Planning and Community Development Department being the custodian of the Advisory Committee meeting minutes. So with that, I'm making that motion. If I can have a second to that.
Second.
I'll second it. This is Tom.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And if anybody's opposed to that, speak now. Okay, so that carries forward. We have election of officers. I'm assuming this means we have to revisit on an annual basis, presumably. This is where this is coming from, whether we want to keep with the same chair and co-chair. Chair is myself, co-chair is Ryan. Anybody else want to step forward to take on those positions and put themselves up for those positions? Don't all rush at once.
It's pretty quiet.
1, 2, 3, got it.
Okay, well, I will say I for one am happy to continue as chair if you want me to, but if somebody else wants to take on that responsibility, more than happy to step down and let them do that.
Andrea, I think we'll need a motion in a second and then to vote on that.
Yeah, this is
so
Phil. I can make a motion to keep things the way they are in the current order.
I'll
I think we need a
second
separate
Andrew.
motion for chair and a separate motion for vice chair, please.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion for Andrea to retain as chair.
I'll second.
That's a second from Becky. If anybody's opposed to that, please speak now. Okay, that's passed then. And can we have a motion for the vice chair with Ryan?
I'm sorry, I just came into the call here. I have to get caught up.
Doug Solar Honor is the vice chair.
Second by Doug.
Okay, anybody opposed to that? Not hearing any, so that means Ryan, you're going to continue to be vice chair for this year, and I will be continuing as chair. Okay, with that out the way, let's go on to the approval of the minutes from September the 8th, which was our last meeting. You should have received that. Does anybody have any questions about those minutes? Not hearing any, so can I have an motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Phil. Not unless anyone would like to pull something for discussion.
A second?
I'll second. Sorry.
That's Phil. Phil with a motion, Becky with a second. All those, anybody opposed? Okay, and that passes. Okay, now I'm going to pass on to House of Levine team to talk about the draft, or Craig, if you have any comments you want to make first.
Well, first, I just want to congratulate our chair and our vice chair and provide you with my deepest sympathies as well. The good news is the job's almost done, so that's the positive side. We realized we haven't been to this group since September. There's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes, back and forth between staff and John and his group. What you're going to see today is really an overview of the plan, It's not ready for public consumption yet in its entirety. That's an important point today. We are still reviewing it at the staff level. We have sent it out to other internal county staff in other departments to make sure that the point that we're starting from is a good point before we release it for public consumption. But we hope to have that pretty soon. There are some components that are still outstanding, and John will, I think, go through that and the reason why. Most of those are kind of towards the back end of the process, and understandably are not ready yet because we need to develop the other chapters first. So really appreciate the opportunity to get in front of all of you just to show you kind of the approach to the plan, to maybe set it up as sort of a primer for what you're about to see in the written text itself. So unless there's any questions for me, I will turn it over to John. Thank you all.
All right, thanks, Craig. And again, as we go through this, Craig or Mark or anybody else can chime in along the way. But to Craig's point, this is an overview of sort of how the plan is coming together. It's an extensive document. I don't know, Craig, Sean, it's probably about 120 pages, 11 by 17 so far, if not more.
137, John, and I'm counting every one of them.
137, 11 by 17 pages. So there's a lot of content. This truly is a comprehensive document. So it's a lot to go through. And what we're going to do today is provide an overview so that you understand where we are in the process, what the different chapters are, an overview of the content that's being developed and has been developed preliminarily for all of those chapters, to walk you through the entire document, and then let you know sort of what the next steps are. You've been diligent in your patience over a year that has been rough for so many people. And one of the things that has taken a hit is the ability to do outreach and engagement on the ground. And it's just a tough thing to do. And we've all tried to recalibrate as much as possible, but that is a challenge going forward. So Sean, go ahead and go to the next slide. Sean, I think you've got control of this slide, right?
Yep.
So we're going to go through an overview of the completed draft plan components. We'll go through each one of the chapters. There's only one chapter that has not yet been drafted, and that is the implementation strategy. We want to make sure we have consensus over the previous 137 pages on what we are recommending. And then when we have consensus on the policy, then we can say, okay, here's how the implementation to begin to get that done. So a lot of the recommendations obviously are in the document, but the implementation chapter will pull out all of those recommendations and put it in a more matrix style format. So there's not a lot of the context language, just sort of the matter of fact recommendations. So, but we don't pull that out and create that chapter until we've gone through the rest of the document with staff. And then we'll go through sort of a review of the timeline going forward of how this is going to get wrapped up over the next few months. So, John, where we are in the plan right now, so we've completed 13 of the 14 chapters. That 14th chapter we've not yet drafted is implementation. It's always the last chapter we write. And again, the reason we say that is because when all the recommendations have been reviewed and vetted in the document, then it's easy to pull all those recommendations out and put them in a matrix in the implementation chapter. So it's the only piece that has not yet been drafted. As Craig said, it's about 137 pages long to date. That's a lot of graphics, a lot of photographs, a lot of text, a lot of tables. It's a lot, and it covers a really wide range of topics for the county. And currently that's being reviewed by all the different departments and the key people at county staff. So we want to make sure that we have things accurate before it is brought to your group for review and discussion. So that's where the document is right now. It's being reviewed by county staff. So we'll go through the key plan components. John, go to the next one. The different elements of the plan these are the 14. So these are the 13 we have drafted already and are being reviewed. So the introduction, the vision, land use, housing and communities, economic development, transportation and mobility, community facilities, infrastructure, military, recreation and tourism, community health, environment, resiliency and hazard mitigation. And then the 14th, again, is the implementation, which we've not drafted yet, but will come together pretty quickly once we've reviewed the other ones. Again, you can see by looking at these topics, it's a pretty comprehensive list to have all in one document for something as big as El Paso County. We also, and we've talked about this before, the county has a transportation master plan. So we're not looking to replicate that here or to redo that here, but to coordinate with those other county efforts. So a big part of the master plan is to coordinate with other county efforts and planning initiatives that are at a higher level of detail for those specific areas of interest in the comprehensive plan to be able to replicate. So there are aspects of this that reflect other planning studies, and that was brought forth into this document to make sure we have continuity across the different documents in the county. That's a really big deal for this document. So, all right, John, go to the next one. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and Sean is going to walk through these chapter by chapter. And again, some of these chapters are pretty long, obviously, and there's a lot of content in there. So what we've done is we've gone over sort of what is in each chapter, an outline of the content for that chapter. And then for selected chapters, we have shown some of the draft pages of the document that are being reviewed now. And as Mark said, there's already some things that we caught that we have to correct and tweak. Some of the things that we're going to be showing here on some of the maps, some of the layers didn't transfer up, so we know we have some corrections to make on some of the maps. And again, it's a working document. It's in flux right now. So Sean's going to go through, he's going to go through each chapter, outline what each chapter's contents are, and then hit some of the high notes as to what is in the chapter. And we'll try to get through all of the first 13 today. So with Sean, go ahead. And then again, Brandon, myself, Craig, and Mark may chime in as we need to, just to comment along the way. So.
Thanks, John. So chapter 1 has 3 main components. What is a master plan, which outlines what the master plan is. It provides an overview of the current master plan for the county, as well as some of the additional documents like John mentioned, the transportation master plan, the parks and rec plan, the hazard mitigation plan. The county has a lot of other plans that feed into this, and so it just provides an overview of what those are, what documents are being kind of carried forward through the master plan, which ones are being replaced and updated, and that coordination there. A more comprehensive and coordinated approach to planning outlines some of the key themes that the master plan is addressing throughout all chapters. Those ones that we mentioned really in our last September meeting, looking at the importance of the environment here, multi-jurisdictional coordination, things like that, and then key planning considerations, some components that really built into how we developed the remaining chapters of the plan. So key planning considerations, like John mentioned, we've shown these are some exact pages pulled from the document. So looking at community engagement, regional context, where the county sits within the state of Colorado and along the Front Range, multi-jurisdictional coordination, the existing land use and development, environmental conservation, and the plan process. Just a quick snapshot of community engagement, where we're at so far in the process. Regional context, this map of where the county sits in the state of Colorado and then in a closer proximity to the surrounding counties. Chapter 2, community vision, pretty straightforward. It outlines the vision for the master plan and for the county moving forward, and then the core principles and goals. Example, the vision. Example, the core principles and goals broken down by each kind of chapter topic. Chapter 3 is land use. This is the one we've spent the most. Yep.
Sean, can I interject real quick? Can you go back one slide? So just as a reminder, these were the goals and core principles that were developed by this advisory committee, maybe, a year ago or 9 months ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, about a year. So then chapter 3, land use, this is the chapter we spent the most time on with this group, outlining key areas of change, and place types. There's been a lot of rounds of revisions up to this point with this group, with staff, with other staff members from their additional departments to make sure we're hitting this right where we need to. So it starts with key areas, leads into areas of change, some context on what's going to change, what's going to remain the same. Largely 90% of the county in terms of land area is only expected to see minimal change.
Yeah, I think this was a really important thing. Go back to that, Sean. This was a really important thing to put in here. At its core, the master plan of El Paso County is going to see the 250,000 plus population increase it's anticipated to see over the next couple of few decades. It's really important that I think a lot of people, change scares a lot of people and it's hard to accommodate. So I think this simple page in the document really tees up the approach the county is taking. And that is, while we're going to be accommodating and working with others to accommodate this growth and development that's coming, 90% of the county by area is expected to see no or very, very little change. And I think that's very important to people, that this development that's anticipated is not going to wholesale change the character of El Paso County. So we thought this was a very important thing to put in.
And is that based on acreage then, John?
Yeah, it's area. So you're right, correct. It's
Yes.
area. So, and in other parts of this plan, we go back in and go to the previous page, Sean, where we go to, and the plan and the advisory committee and plan commission has seen these. Again, we've discussed these at meetings and at length and made revisions, but these are the area of change categories. So it's protected or conservation areas that you see in the green, areas of very minimal change, which is the light yellow, that are undeveloped right now. The slightly darker orange or yellow, Sean, you can move your cursor to it if you want. These are areas where it's minimal change, but it's currently developed, but we'll likely see very little change. And then in the dark orange and the blue are the areas we expect to see most of the change. So it does go by area, but we try to identify with as much specificity as we can where the county can expect to see most of the change occurring over the next 30 years. So.
Yeah, this is Tom. I got a couple of questions on this or comments on this. I appreciate the fact that we're talking about land area, but the land area is not going to read this plan. And the reality is that the areas of change are real close and have to a whole lot of people. And I'm wondering if there's another way that we can depict, or we at least need to keep in mind, that there are a lot of people that are affected by these areas of change, even though it doesn't affect a whole bunch of land. When we, on the planning commission, when we see somebody come out there, people don't come out and fill the stands because something's happening in the southeast corner of the county. They come out because it's in their backyard. And so I'm just a little bit concerned that this might be misleading. And maybe we want that. Maybe we want to keep people, keep people happy, but it's not really an accurate, it's accurate factually in terms of the land area, but it is not it isn't representative of the number of people that are going to be affected by this change.
Well, and that's why we show both the map and the sliding bar of the total area. So we don't want to mislead anybody or anything like that, which is why we put that map in there. And the map clearly states, go back to that, Sean. The map clearly shows, you're exactly right. And that's anticipated, that when development occurs, it tends to grow out from where that infrastructure development currently is. You typically don't leapfrog out into middle of nowhere. So what we tried to show very specifically between these two pages is exactly where the change will be occurring, where it will not be occurring. And then on the next page, we describe exactly what the intended change is in these areas. But we try to be very upfront of the fact that the anticipated areas of change are primarily adjacent or near to existing developed areas. So it is where people live right now. It's adjacent to areas that are currently developed and where infrastructure and services currently exist. That's the natural pattern for growth. So we don't try to mislead anybody. We just want to do a series of graphics or maps or illustrations, paint a clear picture as to what's going on. So we think this map, which gets pretty specific as to where we anticipate occurring, will let people know the change that we anticipate near where they may be right now. So.
And John, one of the other
Yeah, and I understand.
aspects of this is just because it shows change doesn't mean like wholesale,
right,
extreme urban density. We're looking at change through a lot of different lenses, one of which you're about to, I think, go through, which is the place types.
Right.
So it's compatible change, generally speaking, or supporting change. And I think Tom, your point's very valid, but you have to look at change through more than just this map. It's changed through the lens of compatible land use, which gets discussed in pretty great detail in the place types analysis.
Sure, and I would hope that the text that in my version, the resolution is not good enough for me to read, the supporting stuff inside each of those paragraphs, that it does spell it out a little bit better. Just looking at the big picture, though, it kind of jumped out at me that without the fine print, it may be misleading. So I got it. I don't want to hold anything up, but just wanted to be sure that that idea is out there.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And this chapter is 25 pages or whatever long. So there's a lot of maps, a lot of photographs, a lot of text that begins to try to accurately communicate what we anticipate this to look like over time.
Like Craig mentioned, the next is the place-based approach, where we get into the place types. And again, this is something that's gone through several rounds of revisions with staff, with this committee, with other stakeholders, to make sure we're showing what we want to show where in terms of place type and change. So this is the overall map for place types. And then just an example of what a place type spread looks like. I think we've talked about suburban residential pretty significantly, but again, this is what it looks like in the document. Now, the left side of the page is this, presenting the character, the primary and supporting land uses, a context map with some images that from the county that represent what suburban residential looks like. And then what I don't believe this group has seen yet is the place types model. This is a 3D model built to represent the character in physical form of the suburban residential place type. Again, all the place types have a model to support the character description. This shows you an example of what that looks like, with callouts relating to specific urban design or transportation or transition components that help really build and support the function of the place type. Chapter 4, housing and communities. It has 4 key components to it. Priority redevelopment areas, building off the place types. What areas do we need to focus on for residential development? Housing mix, providing that variety of housing appropriately in the county. Affordability, and then environmental compatibility. Again, bringing back that key theme of environmental and natural resource awareness. Another component looking at priority redevelopment is annexation. There's coordination with the municipal jurisdictions in the county that needs to be taken into account as El Paso continues to grow. What areas are available for other municipalities to incorporate? What areas should they incorporate? And this section begins to build on or look at what those areas are and begins to direct prioritization for the county as it moves forward and as future development occurs. So then housing mix, the next section looks at tenure type and the need for variety. Affordability gets into some detail around attainable housing, looking at density in target areas, again, utilizing the place types for focus areas for new residential development and what type of development should occur there, allowing for accessory dwelling units to help accommodate growth while still maintaining character of certain place types and within certain areas, mixed housing type development, what financial incentives exist to help spur development and improve affordability in the county, homelessness, addressing that issue and where, the affordability disparity, looking at community land trusts, and then housing co-ops as some opportunities to address the overall issue of affordability. So looking at disparity, we took a deep dive into where disparity exists both for owners and renters, looking at what areas were affordable based on incomes and existing housing costs. Again, looking at that for both owners and renters. So the same analysis was done for the two different types of tenure groups. And then last is environmental compatibility, making sure we maintain the rural character of the county in those respective areas. What are some conservation easement opportunities? Again, reincorporating conservation design, including residential development and growth in the county while also respecting the natural environment. And then what are some specific recommendations for each place type? Chapter 5, economic development, follows a same structural pattern as housing, first looking at priority redevelopment areas based on place types, and then building into these specific types of economic development related uses, so business development, those employment areas, commercial development for those goods and services, and then the workforce to help build and spur both of those other two. Commercial development focuses on what are those priority areas, looking at mixed use centers, where can we support and spur some of that mixed use development, serving rural communities, ensuring that the more rural areas have access to the necessary goods and services, and then what are regional centers, where are those located in the county, where should more of those be developed to not only support the adjacent residential areas, but also serve the larger county community as well as people from outside El Paso County. Similar to commercial development, business development, those priority areas, small businesses, how can we support small business growth in the county? And then similarly, large industries, what ones exist, what are their needs unique to their larger development footprint in the county? Quality development, what do large industry development look like in El Paso County? How do we want that to grow? What do we want the design of those areas to look like? And then what are some county resources that exist now that can be utilized to spur business development? What are some additional ones that need to be looked into or applied to business growth? And then the same thing for workforce development, prioritizing those areas. What are some focus areas for small businesses related to workforce? Same thing for large industries. What are some county resources and then also state resources to help spur workforce development and continue to build up a skilled workforce in El Paso County? Another example. Transportation, 5 key areas, looking at roadways for vehicular mobility, public transportation, active transportation, which is walking and biking, airports, what role do they play in the county, and then railroads. So roadways are broken down into functional classification, road system performance, jurisdiction, what's been done with the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. What are some general improvements based again on the county's existing plans, those that are done by PPHCG and the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, incorporating a lot of the work that's already been done by the county itself, as well as other organizations related to roadway system improvements, and then whose responsibilities and maintenance for certain roadways based on jurisdiction. And public transportation, similar process, existing routes in the community, park and rides. Again, not only serving just along specific bus routes, but what's that last mile kind of connection for folks? And then utilizing some recommendations in the Colorado statewide plan. So public transportation routes and improvements. Active transportation, looking how to improve mobility for pedestrians as well as cyclists. So active transportation improvements, looking at safety, on and off street improvements, regional improvements, and then local trails. Airports, Meadow Lake as the counties, as the airport in the county, the commercial airport, Colorado Springs, what role that plays, and then other smaller private airports. And then lastly, rail, looking at passenger access, looking at potential opportunities for passenger rail in El Paso County, and then freight, the moving of goods and services, looking at where some new railway stations can go to help improve, commercial activity as well in the county. Chapter 7 is community facilities, looks at county government, public safety, and education. County government really reinforces that key theme of multi-jurisdictional coordination, not only within El Paso County itself, but also the adjacent municipalities and other groups that the county has to work with on a daily basis for all of its planning efforts. Public participation, how to continue to engage the public for all of the planning efforts in the county and to bolster and strengthen that. And then the role of taxes in the county as far as facilities are concerned. Public safety, looking at fire and emergency services, and then the sheriff's office. So what are the locations of these facilities? What are the response areas for them? What areas have gaps that need to be addressed and filled? And then lastly is education, where the school districts are, what the facilities needs are within those school districts. Growth, how is the population growth that's projected over the next few decades going to affect educational facilities and those needs, and then safety in schools and to schools. Chapter 8 is infrastructure. So similar to community facilities, what are some of the public services that are necessary for quality of life, and what are some adjustments that can be made around those? This chapter, similar to transportation, builds heavily on recently completed and existing plans and planning efforts completed by the county and associated organizations. Water's the big one. The county recently completed their water master plan. So what recommendations in there in terms of water demand, supply and capacity are, water quality, again, looking at PPACG's water quality management plan, and then just general management of water infrastructure and facilities. Some examples from the plan. This one's pretty important. Again, pulling from the county's water master plan, projected areas of growth, what the water demand needs will look like, where they'll be, and how this affects development opportunity moving forward throughout the county. And then similarly for the other utility infrastructures, gas provided by Colorado Springs and then Black Hills and those service areas. Electric, planned improvements, alternative energy, what some recent and ongoing efforts are for improving, access to or use of solar energy throughout the county, where some of those projects are located. And then telecommunications, last thing, public-private partnerships. The county recently completed a broadband study as well. That is used to heavily inform some of the needs around telecommunications in the master plan. Chapter 9, the military installations, focuses on regional coordination, at the outset, and then includes specific recommendations for each of the 5 installations in the county. and example page for regional coordination. And then recommendations for each individual installation are centered around transportation and access, land use compatibility, utility needs, stormwater management, air and ground operations, and then pulling again from the joint land use study that was recently completed as well to make sure the master plan is in alignment with that document. Recreation and tourism, two pretty straightforward topics, parks and recreation in the county, and then tourism. I think it's important to note that comprehensive plans and master plan efforts in the state of Colorado are required to have a tourism component. And so this plan aligns with that requirement and addresses tourism throughout the county from a regional scale. Parks and Rec includes a service area analysis of county parks throughout El Paso County, looks at additional land needs or opportunities, the regional trail system and connectivity from a recreational standpoint, and then the role and existence of state and federal land throughout the county. This is an example of the service area analysis. And then tourism, looking at the Regional Tourism Act, the work that's been done by through the Colorado Springs and Pikes Peak Destination Master Plan. What are some environmental tourism components, utilizing the county's natural resources, to help spur economic development as well as general tourism. Again, an example from the plan. This shows the trail system throughout the county. Chapter 11 is community health. Again, a pretty straightforward plan. This chapter pulls again from documents recently completed by the county, the 2018 Health Improvements Plan, and roles and recommendations from that. Looking at the built environment, walking, biking, food access. The county also did a food access study. I believe it was in 2019. So pulling from that, what are some recommendations that need to be carried over and solidified in the master plan for improving access to nutritional food throughout the county? Environment, looking at water quality and water features, natural resources, wildlife management, and wastewater. So examples from the plan, looking at surface water, groundwater, utilizing appropriate water planning efforts completed by the county and other organizations. Wildlife protection, recognizing the different species that call El Paso County home and what future development impacts will have on their habitats. And then chapter 13 is resiliency. So kind of building off some of those previous chapters, looking at hazards and mitigation, and other resiliency factors. So looking at blizzards and storms, wildfires, drought and flash floods, some of the key hazards that happen in different areas throughout the county. Some examples from the plan on some of those systems and recommendations to address those different types of hazards. Then there's disaster response and recovery, largely built around efforts from the Office of Emergency Management, some of their recommendations, and then overall, resiliency improvements. Again, looking at some of the hazard mitigation plans and other hazard planning efforts that have been conducted recently for the county. So before we move on to next steps, are there any questions about any of the chapters or their general components and context?
I don't think I have any questions about the kind of structure, and it looks good, and it looks like you've covered everything. I suppose it's really wanting a little bit more information about the detail, the wording. It's good. It's the devil's in the details, and I think we're going to be looking closely at the wording, and I'm sure staff are first before we even get to look at that. So I think that's a point at which we want to know when we're going to be able to really have a thorough review of the document.
Yep. So right now, next steps, staff is planning on completing their review by February 1st. That's when we'll receive their consolidated list of comments. And then we have roughly a week to make the key revisions to the plan before we send it to you. We want to make sure we incorporate all of staff's revisions. So February 8th through the 18th is when we plan on the advisory committee, you all having your chance to review the document. That's when the bulk of that review will occur. And then from there, your revisions will get sent to staff to consolidate, to outline, and to review. And then we'll have roughly a couple weeks to make those revisions. And then from there, that completely revised document, including staff's comments, as well as the advisory committees, will be completed in early March. And then we will launch a public engagement process for El Paso County residents, business owners, stakeholders to review the draft master plan. And then from that engagement, we'll identify a more detailed timeline for adoption, but general anticipation is May of this year.
So a couple of questions on that. How long is the document, or how long do you think it will be? Obviously, staff has to complete its review. How many pages?
Well, right now it's about just under 140, and we would have to, we don't expect it to get any longer than that with what the chapters are that they are reviewing, but the implementation chapter will be added onto that. We don't know implementation chapter, depending on how we format that. It's a pretty specific chapter, but probably no more than 10 pages, I would imagine. So we're probably looking at something that's going to be about 150 pages total, I would imagine.
I just want people to understand that in terms of what we're expecting to review. It's going to be a lengthy document.
Yes.
Yes.
And Andrea, I would also highlight, it is lengthy, but several of those pages, as you saw in what they presented, you know, it might be an exhibit for the entire page.
Yeah.
So the actual text parts of the plan are significantly less than 137.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Way less than even half of that volume is text. Way less.
Okay, well that's a little bit more manageable then, because I noticed we've got 10 days to review that in. It's not very long, but if the text component is less, I think that's probably more doable. And then I suppose my second question is, between the public engagement and it then going through to Planning Commission for final adoption, presumably the steering committee will be able to review what the public comments were on that, on the draft, so we understand fully what if there are any concerns and any changes that might need to be made.
Yeah, there's no question. We will have meetings with the advisory committee with this group as we need to review collectively and discuss your comments that come in collectively, staff comments when it goes to public outreach, public comment. Yeah, so we will meet whenever we need to review that round of comments, regardless of who those comments are coming from, so that you feel comfortable with changes that either are or are not made based off that feedback before we get something finally drafted to go forward. So absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, it's fine.
Yep.
Those are my questions.
I think, Andrea, it's hard to put those dates on here right now, not knowing what the volume of comments would be from this group and from the public. It might require more than one meeting to go through a lot of those. I mean, some of it's pretty thick stuff. I don't know that public comments are gonna be that voluminous. It's probably gonna be more this group than anything, because you've been involved with it all along. But a lot of it's referencing materials that have already been done, like the existing conditions report and other items that this committee's already seen. So some of that, I don't anticipate a lot of comments, but of course, some of it there will be, and we just need to work through those.
Sounds good.
So one thing that's not on here is what month are we in? We're in January. In February, towards the end of February, we do plan on releasing a video as part of our EPC Community Engage program that the department's taking on. And that video is going to be discussing the master plan, helping the public kind of make sense of what is a master plan, why are we doing it, and what does it mean to them. So you'll see that video release. It'll be part of the public engagement coming out of February into March, but it'll be available on our website, and we'll try to make sure that that gets distributed widely. That'll include Mr. Housiel as the star, along with Mr. Gebhardt. So we're excited about that. I'm hoping John will have his beard for that video too.
The what?
I'm hoping you'll have your beard for that video.
I can leave it on.
You know, I think that's doing the video is just recognizing that this is a lot. We don't expect the public to be able to understand all of the components, because it's very confusing when you start talking about place types and key areas and areas of change. We want to be able to kind of bring it down to a human level so that it's consumable by the general public. And I think having John talk it through and having Mark talk it through, and you know, I think I volunteered to be part of that video. I think makes it a little bit more relatable, and it's something that we can have out there ongoing, so that when we reference the master plan in our planning commission meetings or in our board of county commissioner meetings, that video will always be out there as to what does it mean to be consistent with the master plan. So it's a really good tool for right now, but it's also a really good tool, I think, ongoing as we go through land development application reviews with our hearing bodies.
I've always thought of you as having more of a radio face, Craig.
You know, I had somebody today tell me they appreciated me turning on my video, and I said, that's the first time I've ever heard that. I appreciate that, Doug. I notice I can't see your face.
I acknowledge I have a radio face.
So I saw Tim.
I think there's a lot of really great things. I'm sorry, Andrea. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, I see Tim asked a question about, will we be able to have I don't know if this is answered already, sorry, but advisory committee meeting during our review period so we can compare notes. And I was just looking at the schedule, and it's possible that we could, somewhere between the 18th and the 23rd, have a steering committee meeting so we can discuss.
You know, I
mean,
think
the weekend in there.
the old saying, you don't eat an elephant. I think the old saying, you don't eat an elephant in one bite. You do it one bite at a time. It might make sense to take the first half of the document, review that, have a meeting, discuss those comments, then take the second half of the document and do a separate meeting. I think that would be probably a very strategic way to digest the whole thing, so that you're just not flooded all at once with the whole plan.
Okay. Well, when we actually get the copy of the plan to review, let's talk about setting something up.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Mark, if you have any questions, I know you said you're listening. Please go ahead and send an email.
Yeah, I'm with you now. I think I was given permission. I think this is a great work. It's laid out well. I certainly agree with Craig. This has got to be understandable by the masses. I guess my question is very strategic. When this gets published, what word am I looking for? Not credibility, but what teeth is this document going to have relative to implementing of what the county will do on a day-to-day basis?
So, as we've said before, Mark, the master plan is an advisory document. It's not adopted as regulation. That's what we have zoning and subdivision regulations for. Having said that, almost all development applications, certainly all those that go to hearing, with a few minor exceptions currently, require a finding of consistency with the master plan. So all of those decisions, whether it's a 1,200 acre sketch plan for large scale housing development, or even if it's a minor special use for a dog kennel, when those go before the planning commission, the board of county commissioners, staff is going to be providing recommendations on where it's consistent with the master plan and where it's not. So it brings that conversation so much into the future from where we currently are with our master planning documents. That way, all of those decisions that are being made in the interest of trying to further the goals and policies of this plan. It also potentially affects how other master planning is done, like the Parks Department and their Parks Master Plan. They're going to look at where our areas of growth are and start identifying maybe priority areas for other facilities that the county controls or maintains. It's likely to affect transportation planning. So even though it's advisory, that's not to say that it doesn't have teeth. It's just not regulatory. But it has impacts in so many different places and so many different ways moving forward, not just with our department, but so many other departments, as well as outside entities like the city. You know, we've identified areas of growth. You know, development conceivably could occur in the county and then get annexed into the city. So what we show in terms of density and change, I think necessarily has to impact how the municipalities are also looking at growth.
Okay, very
So,
good.
so I have a kind of a follow-up question to that, and it's kind of more looking to the future and how it might be interpreted. So to what extent, and I don't know whether there's a good map you could bring up, Sean, in one of the maps. I don't think it's necessarily the areas of change, but the land use. To what extent are those boundaries firm, if you know what I mean? The mapping is very broad. It's very difficult to probably identify exactly where that boundary is. And in terms of if something's shown as kind of a commercial area on the master plan, does that mean that there couldn't, you know, just showing something as residential, as a potential residential use as part of that area? Does that kind of a little bit more fluidity, I suppose, trying to not have it being treated like a zoning or like a land use map per se, that it's more of a general intent.
Yeah, if I can, Craig, that's exactly right. This is not zoning. The county has zoning. This is not zoning. And the place types are designed in such a way to articulate the intended character of the area. And it's not one specific use. It's a grouping of uses that are considered primary and then supporting. And what this is it should help the county, the plan commission, the county board, staff, developers. It should inform them to help them make decisions. So this is not a regulatory document. Like Craig said, it's a policy document. But you should look at this, and if someone proposes a development in an area that is just like, this does not at all fit what we want here, so we're inclined to not support your request or what you're talking about, the applicant or the developer or whoever can make their case. They can try to say why it's the right thing, whatever else, but this should inform you to help make decisions and to help you evaluate recommendations. It should help county staff decide where to put prioritized infrastructure for new roadways. It should help inform these things. It is not the deciding factor. It is not regulation, but it's meant to be sort of the long play to help guide incremental decision making.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Andrea, I think when you look at the place type names, you know,
Yeah.
I think they can be somewhat misleading, and I think it has to be that way. You know, when we say suburban residential, for instance, when you look at that place type, it also talks about, you know, uses other than single family detached and all those uses that kind of make up the character of suburban residential. You know, it might be small scale service commercial that's on a corner of two major roadways. It might even be attached single family, right? So
Yeah.
there is some flexibility, but all of that is kind of described as part of the character, right? So that's
Okay,
when
that's
you all
fine.
see these place types, it's really important to look at those supporting uses as well, because we feel very strongly that the character of these areas isn't just limited to those primary uses. You know, without some of the supporting uses, a lot of these areas, you know, would fail in a lot of ways in terms of kind of developing that better sense of place. So, a really good example of that is the interaction between our rural centers and the agricultural areas, the rural areas. You know, that's obviously a huge change from one side of the line to the other. going from maybe a commercial use to right next door is a field. So there has to be some flexibility to allow for some of those areas to grow, to expand, but to do it within the framework of the character of those place types.
Okay, and that's fine. That's how I would anticipate it being used. I suppose two questions that come out of that. Is that clearly spelled out in the kind of an introduction to the master plan that that's how it's going to be used?
Yeah, the first right up front, we talk about how to use the master plan, what it's intended to do, how you're supposed to use it, on what types of things should it help guide the county. That's at the very beginning of the document. Yep.
Okay, great. And then second question, and I know, sorry, Sean, I know you talked about mapping, there was discussion of mapping, and we've talked about this before. Is this map and the areas of change map going to be on some sort of interactive platform that we can zoom in much closer to properties and see how, looking at this plan, it would be very difficult to say, you're looking at a property where exactly it lands. Is that going to be on an interactive or not?
There is an application we can pull together to make it easier for the committee to review maps. We'd want to coordinate with Craig to confirm approach for that if we wanted to do all the maps, but it certainly can be.
That's not really what I mean. I mean, moving forward, if I come in 5 years' time on behalf of the client and I want to see what the master plan says for their property, is this the map I'm going to be looking at, or is there going to be something that's more interactive that I can go on the county's website? There's a mapping thing. I can zoom into the property. Is that the intent?
Andrea, the RFP that Houseville Levine bid on requires that at the end of all of this, they deliver us the files we need to import into our GIS, which will include areas of change, key areas, place types, all the mapping associated with this. And so when we talk about looking at it through kind of different lenses, all of those will be layers within our GIS to inform those applications.
That's great. I mean, I know we discussed this before. I just couldn't remember where we stood with that. But as I recall, though, Craig, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'd like to be, I don't think we, the public, have access to your GIS system on your website at this point.
So you do have access to zoning layers or zoning map sheets that are out there. You know, we could do the same thing with this. There's a licensing issue, which I don't have control over with our GIS department, that they've kind of taken issue with, you know, somebody printing off something and maybe it's not the latest and greatest. So we'll work through that, but I think at a minimum we could print off or offer PDFs of kind of those map sheets, sort of like we do with zoning.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's way down the road, you know, when all this is done.
I understand. I just trying to understand what the end product is for us to be working with in the future. So
I'll print you out your own copy. I have to charge you for it, but I will print you out your own copy.
Thanks.
But to Craig's point, we'll turn over all the GIS files for these maps so that they can incorporate it into their GIS platform for the whole county.
Okay.
And actually, Andrea, your question is exactly the reason why this is parcel based. You know, instead of being like a bubble map, like you see with some comprehensive plans, we didn't want that because that's not usable through GIS, right? We can't import that into the parcel layer and tie it to individual parcels. We felt like it was really important to drill down to that level, and it was painstaking. Poor Sean got the brunt of that. But I think it's completely necessary in order to make good decisions. Because if you look at like the Falcon area, I mean, it's broken up quite a bit, but there's a reason for that. A lot of that's already developed into 2.5 acre lots. But if you were to do the bubble approach, you would show a big bubble over that area as, you know, suburban residential. Well, that would be misleading because it's already developed and probably won't get split beyond where it's at right now. So that's why the mapping is done at a parcel layer just so we can bring it into GIS, and so it makes a little bit more sense. And it's really more of an honest approach to looking at future development in the county.
Okay. Good. Is there anybody else on the steering committee who has a question for Hazel, Levine, or for Craig, or for Mark?
Or for Mark. Ask Mark lots of questions. He needs them.
Okay, I'm not hearing any, and I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So with that, I'm going to, it's not on the agenda, but I'm going to, as we usually do, ask, I understand there are other attendees, members of the public who have signed in. So if there's anybody out there who has a question, please let us know. I think, Sean, is that they just raised their hand, or?
Yeah, so that any attendee, there's a button on your panel shaped like a hand, and if you click that, we'll know that you have a question or a comment, and then we can open up the floor for you. There's also a question function if you feel like just typing it out. We can see that through there as well.
I'm going to drop off for just a sec. I'll be back in a bit. Give me like a minute.
Judy, you're self-muted, so if you want to unmute yourself, feel free to ask your question.
John, I can't hear if she's asking a question.
She is not. She's still muted herself. So Judy, if you press the microphone button, it should turn green for you, and then you should be able to talk. There's also the question box if you'd rather type it out.
John, do we have anyone else that would like to ask a question while Judy's trying to figure that out?
I'm not seeing anyone with a raised hand yet. Oh, looks like Carl.
Yeah, just a quick, really procedural question from the city side. It probably relates to everybody on what I would describe as agency review side. At what point in your process would you expect this document to be available for the city to kind of look at and make comments? That would presumably be after the steering committee's gone through its process. Just wanted to be clear there's enough time in there for the city to review the plan and make comments.
That would be my expectation, Carl. Is after the advisory committee comments have been incorporated.
So would it go out at the same time as it would go out to the public then? Or?
I think so. I mean, I think a lot of what we've done, we've already coordinated with, particularly the city of Colorado Springs, but tried to coordinate with all the municipalities on areas of growth and annexation. You know, obviously, Carl, if you're seeing something that is horribly alarming in what you've seen today, feel free to reach out. But hopefully, you know, what we've seen from you all in terms of a draft annexation plan, I think is somewhat consistent with what we're showing here. So if I'm misstating that, please let me know.
Okay, is there anybody else? Judy, I don't know if you've managed to connect yet. If you have, please speak, and if not, if there's anybody else.
Donna, if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Okay, I don't know whether people are having a problem with the technology or if there's some other issues, but if you have questions, please email them to Mark, and we will see if we can't get back to you with some clarifications or answers or whatever they are. Is there anybody else who wants to speak? See anything, Sean?
Greg, you can unmute yourself and ask your question if you still have one.
Is there anything specific people have to do to unmute if they're on a phone or something?
No, they should have access as registered. I'm seeing Greg typed out his question. It says, heard that Tri-Lakes area was revisiting their comprehensive plan. How will that integrate with all the work that you've done already?
Well, that's one for Craig.
So
The hard reality.
The current Tri-Lakes plan is a county document. It's not a town and monument or a town of Palmer Lake document. So this plan would essentially replace that Tri-Lakes plan. So what you're going to be seeing with regard to the mapping and some of the policies and goals, even specific to that area, we'll be replacing that current Tri-Lakes plan, because the Tri-Lakes plan, again, is part of our current master plan, but this document is set to replace all of those small area plans.
Thanks. And then
hopefully that answers the question.
And then it looks like Donna has also typed out her question. Who do we contact if we want a speaker to attend a community meeting?
Oh, Mr. Gebhardt would just love to get that email. Mark Gebhardt, Gebhart, at elpasoco.com. And if we're available, both of us will make ourselves present at whatever meeting we need to. We want to make sure the public has a good understanding of what we're trying to accomplish here, but also ask any questions and get responses as well.
Are the meetings limited to virtual meetings only, or would you attend an in-person meeting?
I think it depends on the number of attendees. I think currently our preference is going to be virtual meetings, but if it's a small enough group, I think we'd be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? You seeing anything, Sean?
It looks like Judy has typed something out. I think Judy's comment is, why can't, I believe it says liaisons or members of the public that have attended MPAC meetings be allowed to read the document during the advisory committee review? I think there needs to be some opportunity for informed and interested public to participate before the final draft.
Okay, I'll let you guys answer that.
I would agree with that. My plan is to send those liaison members a copy of the plan along with the advisory committee. We have very specific liaison members that were identified when this committee was created, and fully intend to send it to them. Hopefully some of them are listening.
And then other interested members of the public obviously will get their opportunity during the public comment period.
That's correct.
Julia, if you'd like to unmute.
Hi there, thank you. I just was also wondering about seeing that, because I'm on the advisory, I guess, for the county parks, and I wanted to see it as well. So thank you for saying that you'd make that available. I did have one thought about something I saw, and I don't know if it was just a slide that Sean was reading about the plan, but it said, when it said co-ops, it said coops. And I just wanted to make sure that wasn't in the plan as coops. Sorry.
We're trying to do a lot of long range planning for chicken coop.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Anyway, just thought I'd make that note just in case. I'm kind of I have an editor's eye, so that's all.
fine.
Thanks a
I
lot.
appreciate the editor's eye. My staff will tell you that that's one of my favorite things. Thank you for that.
Uh-huh.
Any more, Sean? Any more comments?
Looks like Cheryl may have typed one. Give me just a second here.
Yeah.
John, do we have chapters on chicken coops? Just out of curiosity.
That's Appendix Z.
That's a
This,
zoning issue.
yeah.
Boy, is it.
We received a comment from Mark Bells. It says, I requested to be a local liaison person at the beginning of this process. How can I confirm that I will get a copy of the plan with the other liaison persons?
So we did disband the local liaison group when COVID hit. It just made meeting on those kind of the regional scale or neighborhood scale impossible. So we will be distributing those to basically those folks as part of the general public.
Okay. And then Marla, you're unmuted if you have a question.
Oh, no, I was just trying to let you guys know that when you try to unmute, it says that it's muted by the organizer. So I don't have any questions.
Okay. Yeah, we have everyone muted until they raise their hand to let us know that they would like to speak, and then we unmute. Cheryl Pixley asked if Judy is a liaison.
Yes, she is. She has been the liaison from the outset for the Black Forest, correct, Craig?
She was a local outreach leader.
But,
The
yeah,
liaison set by resolution by the Board of County Commissioners as
that's right.
Folks like Victoria Chavez, Randy Case on the Groundwater Committee, Parks Advisory Committee. They're very specific folks. Judy and several others were local liaison representatives. And again, we disbanded that when all the COVID challenges came upon us.
Okay.
Yeah. Then Cheryl asked, how can I receive a copy of the plan to review before March? So it's a similar response to Mark, right?
Yeah, so unless you're a liaison or a member of the advisory committee, you'll get a copy of that when we release it for public consumption.
Yep.
Okay.
I think, John, are we good here?
Yes, that I have not received any other questions or comments.
So in my response is about when the plan will be available. We just want to make sure that the process follows the prescribed process by the Board of County Commissioners, which is getting that input from the advisory committee, from those liaison members that have been providing input all along. We think that that's maintaining the integrity of this process, but also the role of this advisory committee. It's not to say that public input is not important. Of course it is, and in some ways is the most important thing about this. But we want to make sure that we're following the appropriate protocol for presenting a plan to the public that not only staff supports and John and his group support, but ultimately that the Master Plan Advisory Committee also supports. So be patient with us. You will get your opportunity. It is very much a public document that is a document that we want to best represent the feelings and thoughts of the residents of El Paso County.
Okay, then I
So
think
with
with
that-
that, yeah, wrap it up. Yeah, so thank you everybody for attending today. I don't actually get a list of anything of people who are on the call other than the panelists, so Sean has that. So, but thank you for everybody who is on the call today. Is this meeting recorded?
Yes, it is recorded and will be posted on the project website, like all other meetings, on the same
Great.
documents page.
I thought that was the case. I just wanted to clarify that for anybody listening. Okay, well with that, I think we'll close the meeting, and thank you everybody for attending, and I guess we'll be scheduling the next one whenever we kind of feel it's an appropriate time frame in terms of our review of the plan.
Yeah, I think once we get our staff comments to John and his group and get a good understanding how long we think it'll take to do those revisions, then we'll have a better idea when we can set that next meeting up.
Absolutely. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.